بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وألحقنا بعبادك الصالحين. Inshallah, we start with the first chapter of the Quran al-Karim, chapter 1, Surah al-Fatiha. But just before we go into the individual verses, which inshallah we will go through in a separate recording, this is just an overview of the surah. It is important that whenever one reads a surah of the Quran, that they just get a generic understanding of what the theme or the themes of the Quran, of the surah, is talking about. There are many benefits to this, and some of the most important benefits is it sets the context. Sometimes when someone reads something and he's constantly reading through it, but doesn't understand what this is about, or what is intended from it, or what the main topics or themes is about, then it can cause a bit of confusion. It can cause that someone's just reading in a very isolated way, meaning that they take the verses as if they are completely disconnected and isolated from other verses. But the way to understand the Quran is that all of these verses come together to present to the reader a generic theme or generic themes in order for them to grasp what is intended from the surah and what are they expected to take from the surah. We'll see inshallah when we talk very, very briefly inshallah about Surah al-Fatiha. We'll see how it paves the way for a better understanding and a better relationship with the surah. Because if we have the better understanding, we have a better relationship with the surah, we would then be able to have the practicals of these surahs and of the verses that we can then implement, and we can then instill in ourselves, and then we can change our conduct and develop to be better people through the Quran, just as we intend to inshallah from these recordings. First of all, Surah al-Fatiha has many names to it, but we won't go into the names. We'll just focus on three names inshallah. The first name is the name al-Fatiha, which is the Arabic name of the surah itself, and the translation is the opener. But let's be very, very careful that everything, like we said in the introduction, that every verse is very, very important, and it speaks to us regardless who we are, even if we're not from this nation or from that time, or that nature of people, or those who have gone astray. Regardless of all of that, the Quran is still talking to us in every verse. Likewise, as we're pondering on the verses of the Quran and we're building that connection with the verses of the Quran, that it's definitely talking to me, and it's definitely talking about my life, and it's definitely preparing me, or it's warning me, or it's developing me. In the same way, we should focus on the names of the surahs, because there are many important messages even from just the name of the surah. So the first one, like we said, is the opener. Opener? Right, so there's something that is opening up for me, that it's paving a way for something greater. Or it could be opening up for me so that my understanding of what is to come later, i.e. beyond Surah al-Fatiha, i.e. the rest of the Quran, the Surah al-Fatiha, the opener, is opening something for me so I'm better able and better ready and better prepared to grasp what is in the rest of the Quran. It's also called the mother of the book, and it's called the mother also of the Quran. Now here, the mother, again, a key word. These are words we should not just allow to run past us. A key word, mother. Let's just focus on mothers just for one moment, just so that we can see where there could be a connection in the understanding, so we can take something deeper from just the word mum. Just from the word mother of. When we look at mothers giving birth to children, it tells us that the mother is the core, the children are the branches. The mother is the reason for the birth, and the children are the outcome. So this is already telling us that the mother has an upper hand, or the mother is a key to something very important. So when we then see that a child is born, grows, develops, advances in age, becomes a teenager, gains qualifications, gets married, has a job, has a career, all of these things, we find that yes, there's a lot to talk about there. There's so much detail, there's so many different um, interactions that these children have, many experiences they have in life, many phases they go through, but it all initiated by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from that door of giving birth that took place. So the mother is a key to that child. Likewise, Surah Al-Fatiha. Surah Al-Fatiha is a key to the rest of the Quran. Let's go through the key components of Surah Al-Fatiha, then inshallah we'll come to a conclusion which sums up this idea of how it's a key and it's an essential opener for the rest of the Quran. Surah Al-Fatiha, it talks about what is the general themes or general teachings of what is intended from the Quran. So when we say what is intended from the Quran, we always go back to what we said in the introduction. The function of the Quran is chapter 2, verse number 2. It's guidance for those who are mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we know that this is what is intended from the Quran, let's now see the content of the Surah Al-Fatiha, so we see how this is a key to what is intended from the Quran, which is guidance. Surah Al-Fatiha, it talks about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It talks about the next life, the hereafter. It talks about worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It talks about seeking help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It talks about being steadfast on the right path, the straight path. It talks about those who are attributed to the right path, and this is very important. Inshallah, we will talk about this when we come to talk about the verse. It also talks about those who have gone astray from the right path, so the opposite of those who have been guided and those who are on the straight path. It talks about preventing us from going down the route of those who have gained the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they knew the truth but they decided to go a different way to the truth, go down a different path, out of envy, out of arrogance, out of desire and ego. It also talks about those who have chosen a different again, they've gone astray. They've chosen a different path to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But here it's to do more with the intellect and ideologies that they've embarked on. So this is also talking to us about not going down many different ideologies and schools of thought and many things that we've known historically or are present in the times that we're in, or will even unfold in the future. So it's also warning us from that, and it's helping us to protect ourselves, inshallah, from going down that route, because the ideologies, there's many different ideologies, and the world is full of ideologies, and we find that there are certain ideologies or many ideologies out there which can cloud a Muslim's understanding and a Muslim's embarking on their journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and being characterized with the teachings of the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet, peace be upon him. So again, this is very important. So essentially what the Surah Al-Fatiha is doing, it's so amazing that it's giving you the core before it gives you the details. So it's saying, right, this is what is expected of you, this is how you should be, this is what you need to protect yourselves from, so be careful, be aware, be conscious. Have your heart and your mind wide open. Then later we have hundreds of pages of the Quran, which is then going to be talking about details of how we can achieve what's in Surah Al-Fatiha. So essentially Surah Al-Fatiha is the opener, and it is the key, and it is the mother. It's just like, for example, when a child starts their school life, for example, you find the parents, they start talking to the child saying, right, you're no longer in primary, you're in secondary now, you need to be more focused, you need to be attentive, you need to not waste time, you need to organize yourself, you need to ask questions in school, make sure that you gain clarity and you understand the topic and the subject. And so all of these things, but all the parents are doing are giving them an initial understanding of the secondary school life, giving them that core understanding of how it is and how they need to conduct themselves so that they can go through that phase and they can succeed in that phase. Now, then it doesn't stop there, because they will still be getting a lot more detail over the months and over the years and the weeks. They will be getting a lot more detailed stuff, detailed information, detailed direction, detailed warnings about detailed things on how to achieve what was intended, or how to achieve by breaking up the details of how to protect your time, how to be attentive, how to ask questions, and how to ask maybe open questions so you can get more a more in-depth answer from your teachers, or how to organize yourself practically. This is how you do it. This is how you should prevent. Plan, for example, should be specific. It should be time bound. It should have time slots, etc., etc. So the details will come later. But it's out of the mercy from the parents that they give them just this initial understanding, just so that things can be clear in their mind. They have a clear understanding, a clear vision of how they will be going forward in their secondary life, so that they can succeed from it. And this also comes from the mercy of the parents to be able to prepare them for their school life. If they were to just, on the first day of school, they start talking to them about very detailed things without giving them the bigger context, then it can be very confusing for the child. It will be very confusing for them to also connect the dots, because they don't have the initial understanding that puts all of these details under that context, and that foundation that all this detail comes under. And the same with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of his beautiful mercy, that he gives us this eye opener to start with, saying this is how you should be, this is how you should conduct yourself, etc. Then all the detail come later on. So essentially Surah Al-Fatiha, the beauty of it is it's talking about the message, and it's also talking about those who are addressed. Again, clarity, clear vision. The heart is open, ready to receive. The second thing, it's a contract, it's an agreement between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these are very beautiful things out of the mercy of Allah, and this is why we have in the surah itself the first two names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. After the name Allah, the first two names that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Al-Fatiha is Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. So the names that arise from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So to wrap up, inshallah, we should deal with Surah Al-Fatiha, like we say, is the core message, and we are the ones who are being addressed, and it's a contract that we now affirm with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in that we will ensure, inshallah, and by the will and the support and the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we will ensure and strive and persevere to be able to be characterized with the teachings of Surah Al-Fatiha. So we would then be very, very conscious when we're going through the Quran, when we're going through the teachings of the verses, we'll be conscious that this is the state that we need to be in. This is the condition. This is the servitude. This is the true believer, the true slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through this summary of Surah Al-Fatiha. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He helps us to be characterized with these characteristics, and He guides us inshallah to what He loves and what pleases Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.